The cultural districts of Minneapolis revel in the motto of every neighborhood having its own flavor. Whether that's Sabor Latino in Holy Land over in Northeast Minneapolis on Central Avenue, Baracala Restaurant and the Cedar Cultural Center over in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, or even Mercado Central in Los Ocampo over on Lake Street. And these cultural districts help Minneapolis stay a city on the bubble, changing and relevant today and for years to come.
It's not just another day in your life. Things are changing for the better. At Comcast, we see those changes, and we're thinking about how we use technology today to live, work, learn, and play. And we're building for the future now, so we're better prepared for the wants and needs of tomorrow. That's why Comcast is rolling out multi-gig internet speeds to more than 50 million homes and businesses before the end of 2025, making our already industry-leading network even faster, smarter, greener, and more reliable. Over the decades, Comcast has been your partner, working hard to serve your community, and will continue to be your partner. We're expanding our gigabits so you can enjoy the tiny bits that matter most.
It's Not Your Fault is a podcast for parents, caregivers, and young people navigating the world and its challenges. Here's your host, Brandon Jones.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. I am your host, Brandon Jones, and on today's episode, we are going to talk about creating a safe space in your home to have dialogue about mental health with your teen. We're going to talk about this because it is like a broken record almost on the podcast that I say that you need to find a way to have conversation, have dialogue, talk to the young person or the young people in your life about what's going on with them, their friends, at school, in the community that is impacting their mental health. And I received some feedback about me giving this suggestion. So I said, well, let's just make it an entire podcast episode because obviously it's still a struggle for folks to figure out how to have that conversation. And I understand it. This is why this podcast exists. This is why many other podcasts exist around mental health, is because it has been such a taboo topic, such a confusing topic, such a scary place to go, an uncomfortable thing to talk about and to discuss with people that we care about and strangers, that people still struggle with that. People still struggle with how to initiate the conversation, how to even set up an environment where that conversation can take place. And in today's world where you can get canceled, where you could be shamed for your identity or the things that you're going through. In today's world where you can be X'd out of groups, you can be just, completely kicked out of spaces and places because of your viewpoints or your struggles. It is a scary place for many people to go to. And as parents and caregivers, we don't want that experience for ourselves. We don't want our children to disconnect from us. We already have that internalized fear that our children will disconnect at some point because that's what young people do as they get older and they start to, as we used to say in the community, smell themselves. As they start to feel themselves, as they start to find their identity, they tend to back off a little bit, create some distance, try to find that independence where they're not relying on mom, dad, or caregiver as much. And that is a legit concern for so many parents and caregivers, but we have to understand that that does not mean that we should not have these conversations because of the discomfort. We still should lean in, but figure out your own way to do it. So on today's episode, I'm going to give some strategies and some tips so that you know how you could potentially do it. And now every strategy and tip I share with you is not going to fit for you. And that's important. And that's probably something I should say every episode as well, is that some of the times I'm going to give suggestions, I'm going to give tips, and you have to put your own flavor on it. You got to remix it a little bit. You got to, do what works best for you to make sure it fits your personality type, fits your home culture and structure, your family dynamic, because everything isn't just so cut and dry and cookie cutter. And that's one of the reasons why therapy or therapeutic solutions and counseling is a struggle for so many people is because in the world and society we live in today, we expect an A, B, C, D cookie cutter, well executed, microwaved, drive-through express solution. And we expect it to work the exact same every time. But that's not how humans work. And when you're doing what we call heart work, when you're working with human beings, when you're working through tough things like anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, it's not going to be as cookie cutter as it may seem. And that's why I always give like 5 tips, 6 tips, 8 tips, because the goal is that you kind of pull what you need from what we share and utilize it to the best of your ability. Because this stuff is not easy. Please believe. I'm not batting 100 when it comes to helping people. There are times where, as a counselor, we try all the tricks and tips and tools we have, and that we know that we think that we can have, and that we give people, and it doesn't always work. And as a parent, it's important for you to understand that as well, is that there's no magic wand in the healing process. But that doesn't mean that you should not do anything. Inaction will make things worse. You have to attempt to do something, especially with young people, because young people can have they can lack faith in their future very quickly because they're so young. They're still developing. And when a young person gets hopeless or when they're struggling, they will just check out. They will just say, forget it. And we don't want that with the young people in our lives. So we want to make sure that we create that safe space or comfortable enough space to have dialogue. Another thing I want to say here on the podcast, this might get me in trouble, is that, and I just said it, and that's why I'm bringing it up here, is that we need to not use the term safe space. Everybody's not going to feel safe in a space. We should use a space. We should use a term more like a space of comfort where people feel comfortable enough to have conversations. Because, everybody's judging their own safety in a different way, and we're not going to get 100% alignment on safety. But how do you create a zone or a space that is comfortable enough to at least address these topics and these things that you need to within your family? So here are the tips. Let's get to the tips for today. And again, you have to remember, always do an environmental scan. What is an environmental scan? An environmental scan is paying attention to what's happening in society around you. So that I always like to start within my own family dynamic. Is there some significant grief going on? Is there a power struggle going on? Is there some influence by the media? Is there a current dynamic happening between a celebrity that might be creeping into your relationship or your family dynamic? What's the environmental scan? Because you start there, because there's an influence from the outside that is happening on the inside with your family. And once you recognize what the environmental scan, you can leverage some of that into your strategy. So once you're done with your environmental scan and you understand what's happening in society and what's going on around yourself, then you have to educate yourself. These things are happening. Awareness. What should I do about it? Education. All right. Education might mean going on YouTube, going on TikTok, talking to your friends, reading a book, watching a documentary. It might be talking to a professional yourself, calling up the preacher or the pastor or the imam or whomever it might be. You got to educate yourself and then educate your family if you can. Share the resources, share the information, send it out in a text. Hey, watch this video clip. What do you think about this? Those are good ways to create a space where dialogue can take place. And so many families miss that. They just go straight to attacking. Why are you sad? What's your anxiety about? Instead of creating an opportunity for a dialogue to take place so that some learning can happen and that some conversation can actually be engaging and it's not attacking the young person in your life. Lead by example is the next way to create this space. Now, another broken record thing. I'm always talking about role modeling behaviors. The reason for this is, as a parent or a caregiver, your behavior and attitude shapes the home environment. It shapes the family dynamic. So when you lead by example and you have open discussions about your own emotions, thoughts, and mental well-being, and you're sharing about challenges, your experiences, your coping mechanisms with your family, this encourages a vulnerability, which is missing in so many families today, because so many families have experienced trauma from one generation to the next. When there's no availability to be vulnerable, there's no availability for learning to happen. And when learning can't happen, from remember educating ourselves, we don't foster a culture of openness. So unfortunately, what ends up happening is a lot of people shut down, they go in their corners, and nothing can take place. So always lead by example. Utilize yourself, and which means you might have to deal with your own crap. You might have to deal with your own stuff, and dealing with your own stuff sometimes is why your child's having the issue, because of your response. They're responding to you. So it's important for us to lead by example. If we want to see the outcomes from our young people, we got to live them at the same time. Which means what? The next tip: create a safe and non-judgmental space. So establishing a safe and non-judgmental space is critical for encouraging open conversations about mental health, assuring that family members that their thoughts and feelings will be met with empathy and understanding. Avoid dismissing and belittling their emotions, even if you don't fully comprehend their struggles. So if you don't even understand what their struggles are, don't belittle them. Hear them out, and then give them alternative things to think about. So encourage active listening and validate people's experiences. It's very important, even if you feel like it's silly. I struggle. I'll be honest with you. I struggle with this one with my 10-year-old, because sometimes her feelings just are like completely off from my perspective, but I still have to validate them, because in her 10-year-old brain, that's how she's comprehending the situation. It's frustrating for me, but if I don't do that, I end up hurting and shutting her down even further. Initiate regular family check-ins. Now, this might seem uncomfortable for people because we just don't do family check-ins. A lot of people don't do that. But try, and the way that I've always encouraged families is try to do this around meals. It's very easy. How was your day going? What was your high? In my family, we do high and low almost every meal. We sit down, we talk. We usually start with the youngest person, and we say, what was your high today? What was your low today? And sometimes, kids are going to give you silly answers. My high today was pizza. Or we had donuts today. It's like, all right, great. What was your low today? And sometimes you'll get some tough answers. You're like, whoa, we should probably figure out how to deal with that. And I've had, my 7-year-old, now she wasn't 7 when she shared it. She's more like 5. But, one of her friends stopped talking to her and had a new friend group. And she really was having a bad day. And she's like, this person's not my friend anymore. And started crying. That's a deep thing for a little kid to go through. Now we're talking about teenagers, so it's a little different, but you might have a teenager who might say something like that as, my partner cheated on me. It's like, oh, wow, really? Yeah, I caught them kissing behind the bus stop or whatever. It's like, whoa, okay, we got to talk about this. It's getting a little deep here. So we have to create a routine to foster a sense of comfort and normalize that these conversations should happen about how people are feeling and what they're dealing with. So have those regular check-ins. It might be on the ride to a drop off for practice, or it might be every day at breakfast on Sunday or whatever. You want to make sure that you're having these regular scheduled check-ins so people know that this is a safe environment to have the conversation. I said safe again, a comfortable environment to have these conversations. Promote active listening and empathy is the next tip. Promote active listening and empathy is the next tip. So encourage active listening within your family. Teach family members to listen attentively without interrupting their judgment. This can be hard in some families because, we got some big mamas in families who, boy, don't you be talking to me like that. We got folks in our families who want to have the only say and the loudest say. And that's difficult. And parents, caregivers, we have to let down the wall and the power differential a little bit in order to create this space. We can't just come in swinging the hammer when it's not time for the hammer to be out. And it's important, again, to pace yourself and judge, when's the right time to use active listening and empathy, and when isn't the right time to use active listening and empathy. So again, this is one of those ones where you have to use proper judgment, and you might have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit to make sure that it works. So sometimes all that is needed is a listening ear and a compassionate heart. But if you're not demonstrating a listening ear or a compassionate heart, you might be contributing to the problem even further. 2 more. The next one is to provide resources and professional help. Of course, I'm gonna throw this one in there. Always feel always feel like there is a necessary opportunity to connect with a professional, whether that's a mental health professional, a spiritual leader, well-being coach, whatever the case. It might be a school counselor, but try to connect with somebody who may be a third party who can come in and assist with what's going on. And ideally, make sure that that person is someone who doesn't know you very well, because you don't want to set up the dynamic where the young person in your life feels like there's an alignment between you and this other professional about what's going on, because a lot of times that pushes young people away from being honest about what's happening. But sometimes a professional can give you some tips and skills and some questions to help get those dialogues rolling and flowing. The last thing is to encourage self-care practices, and really this is just to be sustainable. Make sure that you're helping provide self-care practices that are proactive. Don't wait till stuff gets tough and frustrating and everyone's angry and anxiety is through the roof before you start taking care of yourself. Start to take care of yourself ahead of time, because we know life is hard, stuff is going to pop up, and you're going to have to deal with some adversity. Whether it's big adversity or small adversity, something's going to happen. So make sure you're taking care of yourself, and make sure that there's engagement with the family and individual engagement when this happens. So that means that you need to be intentional about your self-care. So encourage activities like exercise, hobbies, meditation, journaling, and even spending time in nature. Just do some things that make you feel good so that you can have some consistency in your well-being as you go. A lot of people don't do these things, and they find themselves in very dark spaces, and they isolate and they shelter themselves from the world around them. And that's what we don't want. So these are just some tips. I think it's important for us to create these spaces to have dialogue. And I say it all the time on the podcast, but sometimes people don't know how to do it. So hopefully something that I said in today's podcast will help you make that crossover and start creating those zones and spaces that are comfortable enough to have critical conversations with the young people in your life that you care about. Because if you don't talk to them about it, somebody else will. And sometimes you don't want that somebody else conversation to happen with your child. I am Brandon Jones. This is It Is Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast. You can check us out in a couple of different ways. The first way is you can check me out on my website, www.jegna.org. That's jegna.org. Send in your questions, sign up on the website. There's articles there. There'll be some new videos and things there as well. You can also check us out at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. That's ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. And then also join the Facebook group where we'll post these tips and these videos all the time for you to come back to. And that is just It's Not Your Fault, a teen mental health podcast on Facebook. Just search It's Not Your Fault podcast. You can find us there. So connect with us. We look forward to seeing you in the virtual world, and come back to the next episode. Take care.
To check out previous episodes of It's Not Your Fault, or to learn more about Brandon Jones, log on to ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
Hi, I'm Shaletta Brundage. I'm a media personality, podcaster, and a business owner. But my most important role is mom. 3 of my beautiful kids have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. When I didn't know who to trust or where to turn, I found ACRA. ACRA provides home care services to families all over Minnesota. The care is not one size fits all. They know each one of my kids is unique. They listen to what resources we needed and what's best for our family. I've seen my kids grow and thrive with ACRA's in-home care. While autism is the most common diagnosis among ACRA clients, ACRA offers personalized in-home care services for people with disabilities, chronic illnesses, behavioral diagnosis, and mental illness. They work with children, adolescents, and older folks too. Find out more about ACRA at their website, acrahomecare.org. Accra helps me provide my kids with a better quality of life. They can do it for your family too.
COVID-19 is still circulating out there in our community, and it still presents a real danger for those at higher risk. You can do your part to protect the most vulnerable. That's older folks, those who are immunocompromised or have certain lung, heart, and other chronic conditions, and people who are pregnant or have just given birth. Consider getting tested before spending time with these folks or wearing a mask when you're in close contact around them. Show you care by taking care.
Children's Minnesota, the leader in specialized healthcare for kids, is here to raise awareness, standards, the bar, the stakes, the question, the curtain. On raising kids' health to the highest priority, kids need equal access to healthcare, more pediatric expertise, a voice for change. Kids need us, all of us. So let's raise them up. Children's Minnesota, the kid experts.
Do you worry that lead-based paint in your older home might be dangerous to your children or kids who visit you? Well, Hennepin County put those fears to rest. Hennepin County offers free lead tests and home assessments. If they find anything, eligible homeowners and landlords can receive up to $15,000 for work on the home, including new windows. The government banned lead-based paint 45 years ago when it was discovered that lead poisoning can affect development and cause permanent damage in young children. But 75% of those homes built before 1978 still contain some lead-based paint. As the paint degrades, it can make dust that little kids ingest when they're crawling and putting things in their mouths. So make sure your home is safe and hazard-free. Learn about testing and that $15,000 grant at hennepin.us/lead control. That's hennepin.us/lead control.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.